All right, we're back. What's up, party people? I am Sunny Ray. This is the Sunny Ray Show. Thanks to our sponsors, Raz Rocket, GTM Ventures. Today, I'm joined by Natanya. Natanya, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me, Sunny, on a first sunny day here where I am in quite some time.
And whereabouts are you in the world?
I am in exotic. Ready? New
I'm
Jersey.
ready.
New
Where?
Jersey. New
Jersey,
Jersey.
Jersey,
Oh,
New
yes.
Jersey. Okay. Not too far from me. So, Nathaniel, like I was saying, maybe let's kick us off. Tell people a little bit about New Solutions Network, like a sentence or two, and then we'll get back to that near the end of the interview.
Sure, sure. Well, I'm in the process of resurrecting my network of companies that I've been involved with since 2008. But the New Solutions Network is essentially a network of companies for human flourishing. We use behavioral science, we use media, we use all the tools in the toolbox, of course, a lot of tech, AI software, but also human beings to really connect with people on a visceral level. And I like to say we're sort of Harvard to Hood, meaning we don't fit in one box. We don't speak one way. We don't stick to traditional paradigms. We don't stick to traditional algorithms. And we try to get real emotion, real struggle, real triumph, and put that into everything that we do.
Awesome, interesting. So, Nathaniel, I was maybe let's go back a little bit if you don't mind. I was reading about your history. You grew up traveling the world with your mom, right? Who was I think a global corporate executive. What did you
Well,
see as a
I was like,
or
oh yeah, you found that. Yeah. So
Yeah,
my
so what I guess my question is what did you see like and learn as a kid that stuck with you?
Mm, that's a great question. So yes, my family was sort of one foot in one world and one foot in another. I've seen a lot of comics talk about this lately in terms of like, what's the American part of you? What's the foreign part of you? Because depending on where you are, you get put in that box. So in the States, was very foreign in the 80s. And in Europe, I was the most American of the friends and cousins because I lived there too. So going back and forth, I think it's really the culture. We spoke a lot of languages, right? So, but I think really looking at language and culture as really almost like, and I don't mean species to insult anyone, but almost like different species codes about like what is danger, what is friendly, what is good touch, what is hello, how everyone leans in towards each other, whether I was, in Asia or South America or South Africa or Europe, Eastern or Western or the United States. It's a lot of different rules, and some of those are unspoken, and how you maneuver those, even if you're speaking the same language, what are the cultural rules that go on there? And so I learned early on, being a weirdo, that you have to pay attention to that stuff or you can be ostracized. Also, kind of looking, sorry, traditionally heteronormative girly and being into things like sports, aggressive stuff, and computers and math. And I just didn't really think I fit in anywhere. But yet I sort of was everywhere.
Cool, interesting.
I don't know.
So
Stick that
when did you first sorry, what's that?
I said, stick that in a pipe and smoke it. I don't know. I
Yeah,
hadn't
right?
think that way
Good luck with that.
before. Yeah.
When did you first realize you wanted to understand why people think and act the way they do?
Great question. So because I often felt very othered, but was like, I just gotta fake that I belong here in all the places that I would be. We didn't have labels for things like um, autism spectrum disorder or even ADHD, or definitely not like dyslexia and all the kinds of things that I just was like, I got to figure this out. Very strong Eastern European, like you're fine of everything. I never missed a day of school. If you had chicken pox or something is falling off, you can get up, you go. So I really just saw that the people I would be around would be so different. What would make them happy? What would make them sad, scared? What boys can do, what girls can do, what is gay, what is God, all that stuff. I was like, what are the rules? Like, who's writing these instructions? And depending on where I got the information, it was different. So I think I leaned into behavioral science and psychology very early on because I was just trying to fit in and understand myself and the world around me. And I'm still working on that.
Are we all? And then you also worked as a journalist and magazine editor before pharma. So how did storytelling shape how you approach
No,
everything
I'm
today?
so impressed with this homework, Sunny. Yeah, so I write quickly and speak a lot. And so journalism was great because they paid 50 cents a word, man. And it was easy for me to just be like, wow, that's interesting. Why? Think about it, look at it from a couple different perspectives, write it down and give it to them. And I was like, okay, I can do that. And I had never taken a journalism course. I went and interviewed at the newspaper because my friends worked there, who was a little bit older than me. He was a grad student and he's like, you'd probably be good here. And I was like, it's like writing a paper, but shorter. Like I had this crazy confidence to try and do things that I probably had no business doing because I was just like, I could try that. I mean, obviously, if you look on my LinkedIn, you'll see my title and we're probably going to get into the whole, what does back from the dead mean? I also would think I could do things physically that I couldn't really do. And sometimes there was an accident. Like I could jump, I could climb that, I could jump off that, I can write that article, so I always had that attitude. And then what I loved was the people that I could meet. So in journalism, you meet all kinds of people. In the same day, I would meet like Teamsters, a farmer, an executive, and have their POV on whatever. And it was fascinating. It was like my personal Jane Goodall library. And then they paid me to write about it. It was the dream job.
That's
While I was a full-time student doing multiple degrees at a time, because that's how I roll.
yeah, wild. So you spent nearly, was it 20 years in pharma and biotech with some of the biggest brands on the planet? So what was the world really like behind the scenes?
Well, that's loaded and we might have to get the lawyers involved, but I will tell you what I can. I mean, there's real stuff. So I'm making light. I learned a lot and I made some of the most amazing connections of soul, of mentorship, of friendship that I could during that time. So there's no regrets. But the person that I was there and the things I thought mattered there are very different from who I am today. And I will say, because there's a lot of good people inside that engine. So I want to be clear, like I'm not blessed saying that the whole thing is evil. However, the things that I thought I did that I was so proud of that were helping people, right? I did a lot of work with patients and clinicians to try and understand how to communicate better with one another, how to manage chronic and debilitating diseases, whether it be oncology or mental health or diabetes or HIV. How to take care of yourself, how to want to take care of yourself when, quite frankly, we didn't have depression as an obvious constellation to chronic disease in the early 2000s, right? So I was kind of like the annoying, care about people and feelings before it was actually officially something that they could monetize, right? And really how to help people maneuver and want to listen. There's doctors who smoke, there are doctors who are obese, there are people who do things they know are not good for them, they still do them anyway. Why is that? And you just make them feel bad and you just tell them more why it's bad, or we find into what's going on there. And that's kind of what I started to bring into personalized communications in pharma. And when I first wanted to do that, they said, you're out of your mind, we can't speak to patients this way. And luckily I had some incredible leadership that saw through my, not only the crazy part of my, but the part that was ambitiously industrious, that had ROI attached to the model about what I wanted to do, which was communicate with people as if they were human beings. Imagine, which meant in pharma, why that was a big deal was because it was so regulated. We could they had to review everything before you could put it out there. So that's why tech was also another big thing that I brought in early days when, they were talking about hits and clicks, and it was a very different time. It was easy to be very smart in tech and pharma because they're just a little behind. So that's where we use tech to scale. So to have which today is so obvious, but believe it or not, in 1999, 2000, this was a time when having tailored content that said, "Dear Sonny, it's been 3 months since your diagnosis." How, be able to write that, you have to have the logic and the algorithms to be able to know who you are, when you said you got diagnosed, what medication you're on, are you male, are you in what life state, and what do we do? And so they would collect things, but they wouldn't put them in data repositories that could be actually executed against. They would be able to have content, but they're like, no, we can't control that. So I had to create these variable content module libraries and get them approved such that they were comfortable. Because I mean, every word, may, can, should, that's what happens with pharma advertising or even patient education. So it was I was an odd duck there too, but luckily I got some friends and the things I did made money, so they let me do more. Because if you
Cool. So,
actually help people, they might take their medicine and then they don't go back to the hospital as much and they do better, and the pharmacoeconomics of it actually pans out, right? So if you invest in people, then people are less sick. Although there's different opinions on if they want them to be sick or not, and we'll leave that for another podcast.
yeah, let's do that. Okay, so your LinkedIn bio says back from the dead 3 times. You've survived 3 near-death experiences. Can you take us back to what happened?
Yeah, some of them are more dramatic than others. It's only this last one, which is actually the least physically damaging of all my accidents, but it was the time I decided to start talking about it. Does that make sense? I've had a bigger issues where, I woke up in hospital and it was a much longer period of recovery, and paralysis as well, included lower half of my body from piece of my back broke into my spine. The recent event, what was different about it and every time, and even understanding what that means, because it was confusing. 10 years ago, for example, when I tried to ask about it, they were like, you were dreaming. Because I saw things and had experiences and they didn't really make sense to me. Like I saw the hospital room and that kind of stuff. And then I'm like, yeah, but if I flatlined, then I had no brain activity. How was I dreaming? But I kind of was so scared of it all. I just like I let it go. And then this time it was a much shorter thing, but I realized right away, oh, I'm in that other place. And then I'm like, oh, I'm going to ask some questions this time because your sense of time, this could be from traumatic brain injury. This can be from a psychedelic journey. This could be from a very deep meditative state where you get into alpha and theta brainwaves. So this doesn't have to be a clinical NDE. But when you get to that place where your consciousness is in a different sense of structure, time is very different than this kind of time. So 2 minutes to us in this frame, I had like a whole lifetime of time in my couple minutes out. Does that make sense? So in that time, I was like, okay, I'm here again. I saw my body on the ground. I was like, am I going to get to go back to that doll thing? That's me. Kind of, I'm oversimplifying, but I started to say, okay, I better, this is like a chance on the spaceship. You better like get your bearings, get all the information you can before you go back to Earth. So that's what it was different this time. And I also realized that these were lessons and I'm just not subtle. So apparently I need really big lessons to wake up and pay attention to them. And so that's what I believe was part of why this happened.
Sorry, I'm still like taking it all in. So is it true that you hit 298 pounds and got a near immobility diagnosis as well? So like what was going through your mind at that moment? And
So when
yeah.
I broke my back and I had to have reconstruction surgery, in the back, they said, you may never walk again. So some of the things they were concerned about were the nerve at the base of the spine responding to stimuli. So there's one thing to like have pain. There's another thing to have mobility. There's another thing to have like, do the can or play soccer or whatever. So there's a lot of degrees of what's going on there. And so the kind of injury I had, I had no feeling down, the left side of my body in the surgery. And then afterwards they did say, oh my, it's amazing. You had like a clinical response, meaning they put a sensor in there and the thing responds. But there's also people who have that who then still can't get control of like using the leg. Right. So it was a process. It was a year. And in that year to relearn to walk, I had also just given birth to twins. So the timing, wasn't great. And there's a lot going on there mentally. And oh yeah, I was also running these companies, by the way, and acting like nothing was happening or wrong. So I would just like get invited to do a speaker presentation for Reuters and I'd be like, oh, I can't go, but my colleague can. And so a lot of people didn't even really know what was going on. A lot of people did. I mean, I got a lot of visitors and a lot of people, what do they do when you're in bed? They bring you treats and you're laying there. I also had some other stuff going on that was undiagnosed. I don't want to get into it too much, but it actually affected the way my body broke down food and, again, just my own inward, like, it's just my fault, it's shame and guilt and whatever. I didn't realize there was other things that were actually affecting my ability to even process food, as well as, other that injury. I'll just say what part of it was: a hiatal hernia. So when I broke the back, I actually had something happen in the front of my body, but it was inside. And also when I went and said, and I'm not a big like crier. I know I look very girly and I have a big heart on my necklace, but I was just like, yeah, it kind of hurts right here. And they're like, oh, you're just an anxious person. Turns out I had this huge hernia in the front of my body inside. You can't see it. No one looked at it or asked for a scan. And I was like, it really bothers when I eat. And what happened was it started to get so big, it was affecting my breathing, like significantly, to the point where I got diagnosed with severe asthma. I was on inhalers, steroids. So I'm taking all these pills. I can't walk. And then even when I could start to walk, I couldn't breathe. I was like, and oh yeah, by the way, I was an athlete. So this was quite a shock to my system and my identity. And yeah, over that time, whoop, blew up.
And so after surviving all that, Natanya, what shifted inside you, and like what shifted inside you, and what made you like take a look at your life where you're like, okay, I've got to do something here, and there's something more for me here.
So everyone wants to kind of say there's like, did you have this like dark night of the soul and then the spark went and you were like, yeah, no,
Mm,
it's not like that for me anyway.
mm,
I literally was scared less, like that I was going to die at different points, whether it was the oncology scare, whether it was an accident, whether it was like, you're not going to walk. I was like, yes, I am. Like, I just had crazy, like, no matter what they told me, I'm going to be fine. And I always have that most of the time running. And that's sort of that immigrant, like, just do it harder and eventually it'll work. And then there's the secret, horribly debilitating imposter doubt stuff that's also there pulling you the other way. But because
mm,
I'm a public figure, right? And I'm a parent and I'm volunteering and things and blah, 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 everyone's looking at you. So I'm like, well, who am I going to be a role model for? The Debbie Downers and complainers, or the people who just get up? So I'm going to get up. And when I get up, my knees all janky and everything, but I'm up. And that's kind of what happened in this last time too. In fact, to my own detriment, sometimes I pushed my physical body beyond regular standards of pain, to try to force healing, and what I'm learning is actually the gentle art of the balance of taking some rest and taking some breaks, and that, you can be a founder and actually maybe get sleep sometimes, and it's not a bad thing. Whereas we were wearing no sleep as a badge of honor before, right? Or, that all money is not good money, and that the partners that you have, it should be reflections of who you want to be in the world. Those are the moments that made me go, huh? And then I paused to think about it, because once you're looking at literally like black and white, life or death, you start to feel like a little bit more inclined to pay attention to the big decisions, and who you associate with, how you tell the story of yourself and your life. And it's constantly able to be rewritten. I mean, now we have free will, right? So I haven't figured it out yet, but I'm still moving along. So to keep moving forward, cheesy as hell. And when you can't, it's okay to say that you can't. I never knew that was possible, I think, until this time. This is the first time I actually like took a rest a bit, because I had to. I also woke up a few days with complete blackness, and um, I was like, maybe that's bad. And I had a friend come over, and she was in neuroscience, and I was like, what does it mean? And she said, it means you need to rest. Like, she's like,
funny.
I was like, "Mm," or I got a prescription. Have you cried yet? And I was like, what's wrong with you? What do you mean? It's ridiculous. I used to think that just being tough through anything was the way through, because it really worked for me before.
Mm.
And I also have brain damage, so I don't remember some stuff. So if it's really bad, luckily I can't remember right now. That's a joke, but it's also important, because I think about a lot of the comedians that talk about things they did that they're mortified about. When they failed, when they effed up, when the press roasted them, whatever it is, right? And they laugh at themselves and how ridiculous they thought they were about what they thought was important at the time, but now they're separated from. And I really advocate for that, for all of us. Put a little distance between the thing that you think is so terrible and yourself.
Yeah, I was actually looking for that quote. It's what is it? When you hit rock bottom, it's like, I don't know, a sturdy place to build from. I'm butchering it, obviously,
Yeah,
but
you
you
just
know,
know what you can handle. You know what you can handle. You're like, well, I guess I can handle that because I did.
so you once said that one of your like North Stars is to bridge the gap between innovation and empathy, if I'm not mistaken. So when did that become your North Star? And I feel like we should do another interview maybe in the coming weeks, because I feel like I didn't really even scratch the surface with what we could be talking about. But yeah, it'd be nice to do another like a part two. But maybe help me land the plane a little bit. I know we've got a few minutes left here. Tell me about, yeah, that North Star of yours, but then kind of segue into New Solutions Network and what
Sure.
that
I
means.
mean, listen, every headline right now, whether you're looking in left leaning or right leaning, independent, whatever, US, global paper, Davos, top of the mountain, bottom of the field, right? AI, humanity, what are we doing, right? Singularity, tech's coming from our jobs. And I think I say that to say that North Star came to me very early on because I was into tech early on, but I was also into people early on. And I always thought that it can't be one or the other. The people decide what the tech does and how the tech serves. Otherwise, we lose our humanity and it decides things like who deserves care more than someone else, or who gets these opportunity or those, um, arbitrarily by factors that might not make us proud as a species as we look back, right? Just like the way we look at medieval practices. And so that's kind of why that's always been a thing, and now it's more than ever because obviously I use AI. Obviously, we used AI in the last endeavor I had. And I'm really proud of how we Ivy Michaud called it empathy AI, right? Like based on real people and healing each other, helping each other, and benevolence. It's corny, but gosh, wouldn't you rather that than something that's going to just pilot you to be, insert Starbucks here, insert, whatever gambling app here. Like we could go either way with it. So I think our humanity is what keeps us with tech. And then you wanted me to talk about new solutions. That's a big part of it. So the reason we have media on our side is differently than podcasts like this, where we really unpack the human condition. How did you get through it? How did you come through the other side? And whether you are someone who's been formerly incarcerated, or you're a beekeeper, or you funded Google, like all of those stories matter, and they're all very different, and they don't necessarily show up in a lot of the traditional medical mental health algorithms for helping people. They just don't consider those. And that's why I go back to the culture, right? So the truth that makes you, I'm a man, or I'm a woman, or I'm trans, or I'm, worship this, or I worship that. I mean, those things affect the decisions and how you maneuver, not necessarily a form from a generic, you know, clinical background that may or may not be rooted in only getting inputs from the clinical trials that we're recruiting on college campuses. And so you're going to have truths, but they're not going to apply for everyone. And that's why when I'm working with military, working with law enforcement, working with professional athletes, working with sort of high intensity jobs, I felt like we needed different ways to communicate because we weren't getting in there. And the PTSD, the depression, the suicide, and the substance abuse is overwhelming. So that's really the heart of what we do, but I like to keep it light. So we talk about your experiences and we talk about that, but I use those conversations for data to inform the tools that we create.
If everything goes the way you see it in your head, let's say 5 years from now, what does the world look like because of your work?
Oh, okay. Really big dream. Okay. I'll do it. I'm like, ooh, I get nervous to say it because it seems so lofty. I am trying to create systems outside the system. I'm trying to create systems of helping, healing, flourishing. And that might be, you know, IPO, or it might be like my, successful beekeeping business. And I don't mean me, I mean whoever the you is. But we want to give people the tools to unlock their inner superhero. And then where do you go from there? What do you do? How do you live that purpose? And how do you live off that purpose, meaning monetizing it. How do you do that? So we're partnering in areas like financial literacy, like things that aren't cool and sexy to go with the things that are fun and sexy, right? So putting them together so you can live a life that you feel like you belong here on this earth. And also, if you have other things going on, how do you get care or information or guidance from places that you trust without ulterior motives in the mix? So it's really a pretty large scale effort. Like I said, there's multiple companies and multiple layers involved, but we are trying to do that, give all the information to the people to be able to make constructive choices from sources that they trust to live their best life.
And Tanya, I also read that you guys were working with Chopra Foundation. Is that still the case, or
Um,
is
yeah,
that
so
true, or maybe I misread? Yeah.
no. Yeah. So, yeah, there was a time, a very dear friend of mine who was the head of the Chopra Foundation Institute. We were working on the Chopra Post, like content, information, conferences. A big part of what I like to do is be, in live environments when there's lots of different kinds of people from lots of different backgrounds, sharing their perspectives on the world or their perspective on the latest technology and how we can kind of merge together. So it's a really fun melting pot of like astronauts and student-led activists and all different kinds of people, but ultimately again for the guide of betterment, and also within ourselves to be able to kind of work within our subconscious and conscious frameworks.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you everyone for syncing with us here as well. We've got a bunch of people watching live. And Natanya, anything else you want to share before we bring this one to a close, or what?
Well, I don't know. We're always looking for stories. So if you've got a story to tell, come find me or my group at the New Solutions Network. We are looking for different kinds of distribution partners. We have some really exciting ones coming up. We're going to be, part of a lot of universities, health systems, HR systems, really trying to like be the go-to for how to get from A to B.
Awesome. All right. With that, we'll bring this one to an end. Until next time, everyone. Cheers. Natanya, hang out for 1 second.